So, what's your superpower?
So I don't believe in superpowers. To be honest, I think I'm lucky in many dimensions. So I believe in luck a lot, and I think the only thing I have maybe personally is that out of a strange reason people like me. So I find it easy to collect a good collection or different people. Different backgrounds and all of them being highly professional and good in what they're doing, and they actually enjoy working with me. So, and that's my luck. I would not call it superpower.
Super luck. So the way it's going to work is that we're going to talk about a few topics. Tamaz, life before raisin, some fintech and some overrated, underrated questions, and then we're gonna come to you and you're gonna ask all the questions. I hope you have a lot. I hope you're less shy than the French people in general. I think there's a good crowd, so that's gonna be not a problem. The question that I wanted to start asking you, as you're from Sakartvelo, which is the Georgian's name in Georgia, is what does it mean to be an entrepreneur there in Georgia? I know that you left quite early, but what does it mean there, being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so I mean, so it's a nice thing because you talked about ambition, and actually being in Georgia brings you directly to either having no ambition at all, because the country is extremely small, so it's below 4 million people, and most of them are really poor. So that the domestic market is non-existent, or finding some unique ways, superpowers and luck to crack into big markets outside, so that either you are super stupid or super ambitious, and so that's what Georgian entrepreneurs typically are. I was there recently at a startup grind event, and I was really impressed how many crazy people, so crazy on the positive side, really believing to develop a product they can export. 90% will never do, but was really fun and different than here.
Talking about Georgia, you like a super fun fact that maybe we're going to discover some along the minutes, but is that you were a young professional, almost professional chess player, and at the family we like to say that in general entrepreneurs are more like a poker player than chess player, because you know they plan less than they just like improvise probability wise. What you know, like your background as a chess player like taught you around entrepreneurship, and did it change a bit?
Yeah. So for me, my personal background, so it's the first company I found. So I've never done anything in startups before, and we didn't change the products a lot. So actually not at all from the beginning. So quite a lot of luck again. So I'm not. So I hate actually moving targets a lot. So I tend to overthink. And what chess player leads to is thinking in, so this is the only thing which is trained beyond when you are young, you start to write down numbers and letters, but beyond that you start think like putting yourself in the other's shoes and think, what is he doing the next step, and what are you doing on top of it, and start calculating scenarios. So that's more or less it, how it relates to the company, and I think what's relevant in the company, because the products we're building are multi-year products, and the area we are is extremely sticky area. So most of you are not our product users. The reason is that people start saving much later in their life than you are. And for them, the savings relationship with their bank is also a multi-year relationship. So our customer stickiness is extremely high. So people stay almost forever with attrition rates of 4 to 5% annually. So meaning that you need to have a long-term plan and execute against it.
And do you have any raisin user in the room, by the way? We have 1, 2, and they're not super old though, huh? 4? There you go. It's actually pretty good for, you know, like a target market that is usually are like rich people around in the room again. That's nice. That's like, I like it. You came in Germany at 16 years old, and I guess like you didn't know German when you came. So what was the thing besides language and administration that was the hardest, or that you struggled the most with when you arrived in Germany?
Wow. So I was actually basically I was a kid with no experience living without my parents for longer than a day. So that was the hardest thing, is to get along alone, and actually also loneliness, because I had my Georgian environment around me. And then, so actually what I struggled most with and what helped me most is to generate or to establish trust and to start relationships with people you do not know. And that helped me over time. But so it was the first 2 years I was struggling a lot. So no German, no friends, and back then I don't know whether you know it, but in the 90s Deutsche Telekom was a monopolist here. So a minute of phone talk costed, I think it was 6 D-Mark back then. So my pocket was empty after 1 hour talking with my parents, actually.
Oh, that's strong. And what was the city that you arrived in?
It's Gießen in northern Hessia.
I have no idea about that town. Wow. What is like?
It's a student town, so a lot of young people, and 60% of students are female, so very good.
Okay. Now we're talking. So you did a lot of things. Had a couple of PhDs. I like when I say that. Like I had a couple of PhDs. Like you just took it from the tree. Then you entered McKinsey. You did that for 10 years. The question that I have is that during those 10 years at McKinsey, like, have you had like any startups idea that you decided not to pursue, and why?
Oh, yeah. So actually, I had a startup idea which decided not to pursue, and this was exactly what I'm doing now. So I decided not to pursue it around 2007, 2008. I can give you a lot of reasons, but neither the team was there, which was passionate about it. Then the environment was not the right one. So a lot of things, and I was not a partner back then. So I wanted to make a next step in McKinsey as well. So I think the things were not right back then. I had a couple of other ideas, but before we launched, we did it really chess-like. So we sat with one of my 2 co-founders and a former client of us who was a former founder, and did a really very structured idea presentation, prioritization, quantification with stakes and red wine. And this came out of it, but there were, I think, in total 4 ideas on the table.
Okay, so that was like a chess move, basically, like a few ones. Small ones. When you left McKinsey after 10 years, who do you think, or who do you know, thought that you were crazy to leave the firm to start raisin?
Oh, basically everyone. So at McKinsey, so I think I was one of the, or like maybe the first partner leaving, founding a company, so which is a high security, high income business changing into low income, high risk business. So exactly the opposite. So if you have so you would not do it like that. And actually, once, like 1 or 2 years later, I started calculating back of the envelope what should be the exit value of that business if my total income over the period should be at least equal to the McKinsey option. And yeah, that was quite high. So
just like roughly like an idea.
Yeah. So I think. So we are probably slightly now above that level, but back then we were nowhere near. So doesn't need a unicorn, but almost a unicorn. So for a good exit, like on total against total, and then one is high risk and the other one is salary. So so on that side, I think it was not well. So that was not well through. But the part was why I left was after 10 years you get bored. So you get like unbelievably bored. So and what I noticed is that at McKinsey, I think I I advised through clients on actually almost the same topic with almost the same toolkit and almost the same team. So that you start waking up and have a déjà vu, and then when you go to the 4th and 5th client and tell the same story, something is going wrong. Yes.
But around you, like except the people from McKinsey, family, friends, because I remember when I was an entrepreneur a long time ago now, 2011, 12, people thought that I didn't have a job.
No,
they thought
yeah.
that it was not serious.
So parents in Georgia are very parental, especially moms are very parental, so they know it better. So I think since 7 years, I think it stopped very recently because she read in a Georgian newspaper that the company's kind of doing okay. But before that, she was telling me, no, you know, I told you, that was so wrong. That was so wrong.
That's actually like the difficult. So now we're gonna talk a bit more about raisin. Like who knows, like more than roughly, like who knows what raisin is doing? Okay, and that's like shy hands. Like it's kind of like if you ask them to pitch, they'll be like, yeah, raisin. Like no. So can you explain raisin like I'm 5?
Okay, so when you are 5, you have dreams for your future, right? You want to become a policeman. To become a good policeman and not to take bribes, you need some money on your bank account which produces money. And we actually do exactly that. So we help you optimize return on your savings by giving you online for free access to savings accounts of a large number of banks. Those being sourced from across Europe, so we enlarge also your options. So it's convenience because it's easy to switch inside the platform. It's one-stop shop, so once you identify it, it's all good. We give you access to over 200 different savings options. And if you are not so much into savings, we help you also build your wealth with capital markets. So we have also a very low cost but highly performing robo-advisor on top of it.
Okay, everybody got it? Yes, 1, 2, that's good. It's the one that have like already the bank account.
You are not 5 years old, so
that's maybe why. Talking about the timing that spread out through 2008 until 2012-13 when you actually launched. What was the why now of raisin? Like why wasn't it built like 5 years earlier or 5 years later?
I think one thing is really biggest difference is the team. Also, I think the only success factor is at the end the team. And back then, so 2008, I had also a co-founder, also a McKinsey guy, who is extremely successful lawyer in Berlin. So I think he's built. So I've never seen a law company grow so fast. So I think he has 100 lawyers now. A year and 1.5 after founding, so he's extremely good in what he's doing. But actually, he wanted to go back to law. So and I was also not so passionate about it. And that changed 5 years later a lot, and especially the team, because all of them are McKinsey. So, but we are much more complementary than the first setting which we had. So the team setting changed. And the second thing is, at the beginning, so 2008, you have to imagine it was in the middle of the financial crisis, so banks were really, really hungry after client funding. So they were paying on, I think Deutsche was paying back then on 6-month deposits 5%. And my initial page was, oh, we can make out of 5, 10. And the investors say, oh, but so if you don't do anything, you still get 5. So where's the problem? So you're not solving any real problem. And that changed around 2012-13 because the other options were like around 1 and ours was around 3. So bigger difference.
And so you started, and when you started, you had nothing. Like basically just a pitch. You had to convince both regulators and banks to become partners. How did you do it? Like, did you fake it till you make it, like we say, or like what was the story there?
So I realized, or we also as a group realized that we were building actually in parts, in parallel parts which were not usable at all. So we were building call center environment and software. We're building our online banking. But as a marketplace, you need a partner at the beginning, but we didn't have any. And that was the major blocking factor. So I realized that my McKinsey network and client network doesn't help at all because the types of banks I've served were really different to types which we partnered with. So I went back to another skill which I had as a student. I had a part-time job as a headhunter, so like people who call and harass you or your employees. So if you're at the office and someone stands up and starts talking with a low voice, probably a guy like me is calling him and offering a job somewhere else. So that I was, I think, really good at that. So I started cold calling banks and have done exactly the same. So I found out who is responsible, get access to him, do a long small chat, try to make up a meeting, and try to find like anything which interests him, and then say, oh, it's exactly what we're selling. So yeah.
Okay, so you now, I believe, are like a true European company. Even though most of the team is in Berlin, but you have websites located in 5, I think, different countries. Basically, and also I'm sure you know, but the French website means grape in French, which I think that maybe some French people get confused, but it's actually a nice one. My parents are winemakers, so I'm very happy about it. What are the things that you put in place since day one, so the company thinks as a European one and not just a German one?
So our when we launched in Germany, our major pain point was actually other than launching in Georgia, you are in the main market for this product. So that if you think about going somewhere else or going somewhere, then it's Germany is the biggest savings market in Europe. So that to go outside of the country is much more difficult than when you launch in Luxembourg or Ireland or wherever and go for the largest market, then you go somewhere else. So that actually we're quite comfortable after year one, because we thought, wow, that's going really well, the numbers are okay. So we were thinking about launching other products and doing some website optimization, conversion, doing some TV campaigns, until we talked to first international investors who said, this is nothing for us, because you are, unless you are really European or global, we will never invest into your company. And those were the guys whom we liked, I don't know, Index and others. So they said, so you have to have a plan how to launch very fast across Europe, so that we were more or less forced to go out of the biggest market and go for smaller markets. And then when we've done that, there were 2 approaches for discussion: one going for the second and third largest markets one by one, or doing more a PR gag and doing like one day we can accept all 31 nations across Europe, which we've done actually. So we launched first raisin.com before going for single markets, so that we were, I think, one of the first companies, it was before Revolut, before others, which accepted all nationalities across Europe from any residence in Europe, just to have this pan-European and pro-European in the product setting. And then launching every other single market is just customization of language, setting up call center, so much less effort than the technical setup of accepting those nationalities.
So, like, how do you decide like on the next market? Like, do you have like a playbook or?
Yeah, so we actually we've done a small project with ESMT with a lot of like prioritization points based on different criteria, savings market size and so on, propensity to switch, share of digital market. So what came out is we prioritized the market which is the least relevant for us until today. And we decided to drop that prioritization, so and to go a bit more like I think gut feeling and the market, like how people react and banks react to it, brings you much more knowledge than the naked numbers, and the naked numbers brought us nowhere. So we launched in France, our second market.
That's a good one to launch. Well, second market was Germany for us. That's like an exchange of countries. Let's talk about who works in the fintech industry here. Okay, that's a bit. I'm wondering, like, what's, you know, like you started like a long. I mean, like us, like 6 years ago, and 6 years in fintech years is pretty long. What has changed in the fintech industry since you started Raisin?
I think for us, it's very relevant on the B2B side. So banks are very relevant to us. So first is we're selling bank products, so we need to be on good terms with them. The second is we have a lot of partnerships where actually we're giving a white label version of our product to third parties, which are once again banks or financial agents or neobanks. So N26 is our partner, Commerzbank is our partner. So we kind of offer the product as a service as well. So that to be successful in that, first thing is they need kind of to take you serious and to trust you, and that's changed. So I think when we launched, fintech was a strange animal, so no one really understood. So, and it was not so widespread. So people were really a bit asking for, am I the first one? So like majority of the discussion I had in the first or second year is, am I the first one, or ideally second? Maybe I would be really lucky to go live as number 10. So actually, do not touch it until it's proven, and that changed a lot. So I think this like partnership building ecosystems has become normal. The second thing which changed is there is big money in this. So VCs are really throwing a lot of money behind this, and that was not like that back then. At least not in continental Europe. So UK was a bit emerging with large funding rounds, but I think none of them happened back then on this side of the channel. And the third thing is actually the regulators had no experience. So I'm not talking about sandboxes and some experimenting, but actually even interaction with them was not normal. So that first times we reached out to BaFin, the standard answer was you are not regulated, so we'll have no one who will answer your question, basically. So that's changed also to the positive.
Okay, and so you if I understood well, you have kind of like a legal approach about product in fintech. Which sometimes is a bit like a countercurrent into what's being done. Can you talk a bit more about that and explain that vision?
So we launched a bit. So like our basic product, I explained it's savings, but savings is very large. So savings is in Germany, savings is roughly 2.3 trillion money is on savings. So you need to go for part of it. So you cannot do savings from day one. And total wealth is like 4 trillion, so you cannot go for trillion from day one. So that we started to look product by product, and mainly based the initial prioritization was actually based on where we can build a sustainable MVP fast. So that the first product we've built was term deposit, because term deposit is simple. So you're putting money for 1 year aside, and that's actually blocked and fixed, and nothing can happen, and you pay out at the end of the term. So you have 12 months to fix everything which you've built which is not correct. So let's assume we had all payout functionalities and prolongation functionalities and everything, but we might have not. So so that you are building products which are easier to navigate through. I think 2.5 years down the road, we built our first overnight deposit, which was not kind of overnight deposit, was lump sum breakable. So sorry for non-fintech guys. So actually you could access only the full amount. The fully flexible overnight deposit we've built only 4 years down the road. And then we built a robo-advisory product or like passive investing product, which we launched just a year ago. And we're building other financial products on top of that. We've launched our savings plan, which you can start with 50 euro, which is the lowest amount in the market, which launched this just like 2 weeks ago. So that's and that's relevant for other people. So like for you, this is the most relevant product, because if you're young, you can take higher risk and you pay in 50 euro a month. The cost of it is like 0.49%, including product cost. So you're basically paying 20 cents a month for a savings plan, which gives you a lot of return and is very flexible. So you can take out money anytime. So that we are building according to complexity, and of course prioritize according like how important is the bucket, does it fit into our customer experience, are we targeting new target groups by this, and all step by step and Lego-like, so that you come to our website, you'll see like the product categories.
Talking about competition, actually not talking about competition, in the fintech industry, the competition is very fierce, whether it's for retail or for like other segment. At the family, we advise our founders not to look at competition. That a minute spent at competition, looking at competition, is not looking at your product. Is this something you agree on, or something that you didn't do at Raising? Or if yes, like can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I mean, I would 100% agree, and why? Because we were the first one to launch the product globally, actually. So that's invented in Berlin, more or less. Or back then in Frankfurt or wherever, but in Germany. So we had copycats from, I think the first one launched like 10 or 11 months after us, and then spreading out. So we have 4 basically identical copycats in the UK. We have, I think, 2 in Australia. We have 1 in the US. We have 1 in Germany, formerly 2. So like massively. We have even in Dubai and in India. So that then like people whom you know start sending, oh, have you read about this? Oh, and there is some great article about those other guys. Are you like, and are they serious or like? And so if you start doing that, then you are reading every day about your competition and lack of sleep, and then you are like really looking at someone whom you see behind you in the mirror. But actually you are decelerating because you're observing all the time the mirror and telling yourself, oh, that guy might be faster than me, so let me observe him a bit better. I need a better view. Let him come closer, so maybe I learn something from him, but you cannot learn anything from him because that guy is reproducing your product. So that actually you can only learn if you do new stuff and experiment and do the opposite of what he's doing, because he's mainly copycatting your product, also your company colors and anything. So so that's my advice as well. Don't overspend time on competition. It's good to know. So for us, when we do B2B sales, it's good to know the differentiators and to explain to and to differentiate yourself and to explain to the counterparty that the only meaningful choice is us. So you would be actually nuts and acting against the interest of your company, and you would really look stupid if you do another choice. So that's one you need to understand in detail why that's so. But if you understand that, then it's the only thing you need to know.
And I think just going to kind of like founders' advices. Like one would be, don't look at the competition. I don't know if you interact with early stage founders a lot, but like, what would be like the top 3 mistakes you see they make, and what would be your advices then?
So I think one is, so it's not about early stage, but it's about German founders in general. So and we are also German founders, so we do the same mistake. It's a combination of lack of ambition and inability to have non-linear scenarios in front of you. So if you look at your current numbers, you extrapolate them in 3 years, and you plan against that. So you say, oh, if I burn so much, and if my next funding round is exactly like the one before, so how much can I hire? Can I hire more expensive people than I have? And so you get in this anxiety of not overstepping, not overdoing, and avoiding mistakes, which is exactly the wrong mindset. So we are constantly in that trap, but that trap decelerates you very much. So that's not good. So being more aggressive and even against your most aggressive scenario is the right approach actually. But so yeah, so I can't teach that because we're learning that all the time. The second thing is especially in the early stage. So people have great ideas in mind. What helps at McKinsey to write them down properly, because you are talking mostly to someone who first never heard of your company. Second, probably your product doesn't exist that way in the market, because otherwise it would not be unique enough. And then completely different stakeholders, people who know finance, who do not know finance. VCs are very different, non-Germans are extremely different. So to explain to an American investor that savings are important, it's almost impossible, because you say, oh, but do you do cryptocurrency as well? You don't do cryptocurrency? Okay. Is there another angle? Do you do like a small portion real estate investing? Because that would really excite me. Or you don't do that? So that you need to relate to people who are not your market insiders. To do that properly, you need a very good storylining, storyboarding. So the basic techniques McKinsey also learns or teaches you is how to put a story properly that a non-involved person can understand it basically in 10-15 minutes. So good story, crisp, and selling your product. So selling to investors, selling to customers, selling to B2B partners. And because founders are very much somehow like so excited that they either do not have time to do that or are not able actually to put themselves in other person's shoes and write it down like day one, 5-year-old kid. I think that's especially early phase is important. The third one is I think we went through this MVP after MVP. which actually our product, yeah, I would say it's like you might say as a client it sucks a bit, and it sucked a lot at the beginning. And I'm a client from day one myself, so I know all the things which do not work and all the flexibility which we don't have. So, but if you do not go it that way and try to build the excellent product, it takes you a lot of time and you will go bust for sure. So small steps and going another MVP. So like, or making the MVP better over time. That's a better approach.
You talked about, like, on the first point about early stage founders sometimes being a little bit too pragmatic or too rational about, you know, their endeavors. Do you think that the founders needs to be connected to either the problem or the industry in a really passionate way to make a dent, or you don't believe in that so much?
No, I fully believe in it. So, I mean, I was dealing with the savings and investments for 5 years at my McKinsey career. So I was a bit, and actually, what I was really angry about. So I've done a lot of projects on deposits. So, and when you go to the banks, actually, banks and customers have exactly the opposite interest. So customer wants to earn a lot of money, bank wants also to earn a lot of money. If one side earns a lot, the other side earns less. So that's the basic dilemma. So a lot of projects I was doing in McKinsey was so it's called backbook optimization. So what you actually do is to try to psychologically sell a customer a really shitty product, but make him believe that's a great product so he doesn't switch, so that there is a mismatch in everything, perception and reality on the customer side, so it's completely conflict. So, and it starts really to excite you and to make you also very, I would not say angry, but passionate about creating fair products which have a good return and are transparent and simple to use. So that I had that myself. So that I'm really passionate about a couple of principles which we do not do in our company. So we never had a hook product on the platform. We do not have stuff which is against the customer interest. A lot of banks proposed us a scheme where we would actually earn more if we optimize the customer price. So if we pay customer less, we could take out our commission from that. We constantly said no for the last 6 years, so we're not doing products which put ourselves in conflict of interest with the customer. So yeah, so you need to be passionate, I think.
One thing that so I watched like a few interviews that you gave that are available online. This, by the way, is recorded and will be available here. Oh no, we don't have it. Startup Food. It's our YouTube channel. And what I liked about now on those videos is that you always have like this little smile, and it's kind of like a genuine smile that feels like you're having fun while building an empire, you know, which in general like is not associated with, you know, it's like either you have fun or you build an empire, but you cannot do both. Do you talk about that? Like, how do you do that? Like, do you have any tips or things that you learned along the way?
Oh, so I think that's pretty simple because so my main driver beyond being bored was actually I want to enjoy stuff I'm doing, and that's what I'm optimizing for. So I'm not optimizing my exit value because I currently do not plan for any exit as well. So what I'm optimizing is the fun, and the good thing is we're all kind of children, so we want to play around. So, and of course it's extremely serious, it's about clients' money, but you are testing, and it's extreme, like you try to satisfy your intellectual curiosity. So until you have that feeling, then you are super happy. And I lost neither my intellectual curiosity nor the willingness to try and test and to see and to play around. So that I think that's the most rewarding part if you're founding yourself. You are in that driver's seat who is kind of has his small Lego town and building pieces and seeing what happens and how like other Lego pieces react.
You were talking, and I don't have the mic. You were talking about the value of the team, and in general, if you ask a later stage founder, they're always telling you like hiring, culture. But the question I want to ask is that, you know, like what are like the value that you look for people that in general are undervalued by the common environment?
I think the main, so like this topic of people, so there are two topics which I personally am excited. One is I like people having fun coming into the company, so a lot of smiling, interaction, so that's where I feel comfortable as well. So if people start to close up, and if I feel politics and so on, so I feel extremely uncomfortable because I've seen those environments and I don't like them. The second thing is I like people who leave Raisin being extremely happy about their experience. So that so some of them found, some of them go to large corporates, some of them from us went to McKinsey afterwards, or to other consultants, so Bain. So we have a lot of consultants who were former Raisins. So, and it has to be for them a positive experience. So that that's actually, if you think like that, then it gives you a lot of what you want to avoid and how is the whole learning or like the experience inside the company, so that you want people to learn, you want people to experiment, you want people to be open, you want people to be willing and able to fail, to make small mistakes, to be transparent about what's happening, so that it's a cozy environment. And the main thing we are looking at everyone whom we hire is, do you want to go out for a beer with them? So would you be comfortable spending an evening and talking through the evening with them? If you are, that's the common denominator, because then people start smiling, they want to spend time with each other, they do not feel uncomfortable. And this, I think, we try to hold through all employees. So if we do not feel comfortable with that person, then it might be the best and whatever, and the most functionally trained, but it's not someone for us.
Okay. You recently acquired a German bank, which is kind of like an uncommon move in the way that most of your team is in Berlin and come from being a startup, and then now part of your team is in Frankfurt and comes from being a bank. How do you deal with that kind of like schizophrenia in between the two now?
Yeah. So the bank. So we work with the bank for the past 6 years and more, and so it's our first like in fintech you have this servicing partner, white label partner who helps you build the product and payments and KYC function, so that we know those people very good. Actually, the main reason to work with them and not with someone else was on the people side. I liked the CEO of that bank very much, so we went out for drinks and started discussing the idea, and we had a very nice and interesting evening, and I realized we can work with those guys. So transparent, integer, likable. The good thing after 6 years is people are sarcastic on both sides, of course. So the CEO, when he calls the guy like die Jungs im Keller, so because our first office was in the cellar in Mitte, and on the other side as well, all those inflexible Frankfurt guys, and they want another compliance report, and so it's sarcastic, it's funny, people get along well. At the same side, on the less superficial level, we need the bank, it's a typical bank in Germany, which means that the average age of employees is slightly above 50, and the bank has not invested in tech or IT for very long, or like minimum investment. So what they needed to have like basic functionalities, which we also need. So that we need to renew a lot. We hired in total 10 people in the last 12 months, which are new to the bank and are younger. And actually the clash of civilization now happens not between the bank and us, but inside the bank. So that there are younger people coming in with a lot of new ideas, and then there are this older people who say, oh, but compliance, and did you really look at that? So there is a lot of movement and chemistry going on there.
Just before we go to the public's question, I like to play a little game. It's called Overrated, Underrated. I tell you one word, and then you tell me overrated or underrated, and you tell me why. Brexit, overrated or underrated?
I think it's extremely overrated because we'll continue living like we do today. On the other side, for us, so I hate Brexit, but it's a great opportunity because a lot of Brexit banks are our potential partners and clients, because they need to build, actually stupidly enough, a new balance sheet in Europe. Great.
Well, thank you. Blockchain, overrated or underrated?
Completely overrated.
Okay, can you talk more about that?
I like when people. I like when people develop technology and then look for use cases. So I think I get 10 emails a day asking, "Oh, do you do this and that through blockchain?" And then I either do not answer. Yeah, we do exactly that, but not through blockchain. It kind of works, and it's not solving any of my problems right now. But when you find a use case, please come back to me because I would love to use that.
Do you have any like crypto, Bitcoin, anything?
No, I'm not. I don't believe in that as a currency. It's a good speculation object. But you can speculate with anything else. You can also gamble. So,
Europe, overrated or underrated?
I think it's underrated in terms of the opportunities, and it's underrated in terms of like us bringing out our voice. And I mean, this is like the number of nationalities I've heard, and almost all Europeans. It's unbelievable. So, and I think we're not on par with the. Our voice is not on par with what we are and what we're creating and what we're demanding. So I think it's underrated in terms of how much time we spend on Europe, each of us personally.
The Berlin startup scene, underrated or overrated?
I think it's extremely well rated, so on par with its reality.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
No, I like the scene. So I know a couple of people, and I think we had some initial successes, but to come further and beyond the early e-commerce use case and be a bit bigger, we need a change in a lot of things. So one thing is. It's one of my more passionate topics is to make employees co-owners and employee share option plans are not treated well in Germany. They are treated better than in France if you're not a French company. So that's the worst you can get. But across Europe, I think there is no mentality of creating this. So everyone wants more ownership through employees. But it's actually, you have to tax it in front if you have an option plan, then so it's so much and it's normal income, though you do not have any flow of funds in the beginning. So I think it can be done better to create really a culture of owning the companies and driving them and bringing in more talent, because of course we cannot compete on salary level and not in the city.
And talking about the Berlin also attractiveness regarding like talent from outside, is one of the reasons you're in Berlin, you know, the fact that you can bring people and get easy visa for them from all over the place?
Oh yeah, that's the main reason actually. So what we realized at the beginning was that so my two co-founders actually lived in Munich when we founded, and we had a longer discussion because someone had to move and I was in Berlin. So I said, we're doing Berlin. They said, no, we're doing Munich. So, and then they realized actually what Munich meant when they rented our first office, which was I think a 7 square meter cubicle, and it costed exactly as much as our office afterwards, which was where we had 14 people and launched the company. So yeah,
that helps. Intelligence, overrated or underrated?
Wow, I think it's. I think like individual intelligence is a bit overrated because I think genius doesn't make a difference, but collective intelligence is maybe underrated and how to use it.
Fucking brilliant. That's a super smart way to answer that thing. I was like, fuck. European Fintech company launching the United States, overrated or underrated?
I think until now overrated because everyone announces, no one does it, but let's see.
Cool. Now, like last question, and then we go there. It's more like a broad question, almost philosophical. If you could spend 1 year in the past anywhere, where do you spend that time to satisfy your own curiosity?
Okay, so I love reading history books, so I was when I was a small child, I was a big fan of Alexander Dumas, actually the time he describes this Three Musketeers, I would love to spend 1 year there, but of course being a well-placed aristocrat and speaking fluent French and enjoying my life, so at the top 0.1% of society.
Well, thank you very much. I think French language is beautiful when you hear it, but I think Georgian is the most beautiful language I've ever seen written. Really.
If you define beauty by difficulty, then yes.
For sure, then thank you. Thank you very much. Big round of applause. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Tamaz, for the very interesting series of perspectives on different aspects of startups, but much more than that. And I gather that obviously not only do you have 2 PhDs in economics, but you've also studied law. You've done the first Staatsexamen here in Germany, I understand. You've an interest in history. You've done a little reading in politics as well. So I think I would like to ask you a couple of questions. I've got many more, but to be fair to the rest of the audience, I'll keep it to 2. On a lot broader issues than startups and making money on a startup or making money for your clients. The first one would be one of the big issues of around the world is the huge indebtedness of governments and the private sector. With your background, how would you say could this problem be solved, or do you think we can just ignore it? The second question is even broader. It relates to what you see the prospects for our Western-style democracies. And I hope these questions aren't unfair, but it's very rare that one gets the chance of talking to somebody as bright as you. So I thought I would ask you those questions because you probably have more insights than most people.
Oh, thank you. So it's humbling and I think a bit too much demanding for me. I'm happy to spend time afterwards with a glass of wine. So on the first question, indebtedness. So I think when you so let's say extremely complex, you have public indebtedness, you have private indebtedness, and I think the breakage into the system comes when you're putting the duty to pay back actually on someone else. So private indebtedness is an issue, but it's not a big issue at the end because the market typically tends to at some point either write down or have a corrective mechanism so that people, either the credit becomes them very expensive because banks lose money and need to readjust, so the mechanism of it, so the selection of the credit, because on the other side the banks have also interest in not giving out completely crazy, so in that sense, so that there is a market mechanism in there. I think the more difficult part is the public indebtedness, because that is, especially when you have elected governments which are there for less than 4 years typically, because you have coalitions breaking up like in Austria, so that you're actually spending for free. So there will be someone else paying back, but it's not you as a politician, and he has a completely different interest than you have. I think so to solve that issue, that's very simple actually. So we had, one of my very close friends is former Prime Minister of Georgia, and he has introduced a clause in the constitution which has a couple of limitations. One of them is it's a spending limitation on the state in relation to GDP. It's a indebtedness limitation. It's a limitation on introduction of any new taxes. If you do all that combined, then actually you do not have enough to maneuver to do any. And it can be only overturned with 2/3 majority in the parliament plus a plebiscite. So you need a double support. So you need to persuade constituents and have a 2/3 majority. So you can limit that. So it's not impossible. The question is, so who has interest in that? So you need someone in the government with a very long-term thinking. The issue needs to be so pressing that the value of the discipline in this is seen as a virtue. Do I see that coming? I think the good thing is it's at the end I really believe in balance and equilibrium, and there are phases of overspending, and then there are people like in Germany who do not like spending at all and who underspend, and the market mechanisms helps as well. So the market mechanism helped in Greece, helped in Italy, so that the markets are not crazy and stupid. So they punish misbehavior more or less. So I'm optimist in myself, so I do not believe that we will fail because of the public indebtedness dilemma. I think more and more countries will be going down that road, because there will be enough public support to say, actually, I'm, as a young person, and majority of you are young, I do not want to pay public promises of a stupid guy who is there only for 2, 3, or 4 years. And you can raise those issues. So these are issues. It's on your back, actually. It's not a pension promise. It's a broader overspending on anything. So that I think there is a positive scenario there. So I believe that can be tackled. So the second question was on the political future of democracy, or like what happens to us. So on that one, I'm a bit less optimistic, but I think it's worth a fight. Why? Because so if you think like, what are all those populists? What is their main argument? It's actually a stupid argument. It's a nostalgia. So it's something which probably was never there like that, but which people have hardwired in their brains, saying like, when I came to Germany, of course, everything was much cheaper, and D-Mark was much better than euro. And when I was a small kid, then Russian or Soviet ruble was extremely good, because you couldn't buy anything for that, but the prices were stable. So that you put everything in this nostalgic. Of course, the main reason why I have good memories is I was younger and I was able to enjoy much less money, so that the whole experience, the return on my spending was much higher. So that, of course, I'm excited about this all times. So the only real weapon against that is to have a positive vision, so to show that the life can get better, and you are doing some real stuff for making the life better. And that is the only way forward also for Europe and for our parties, especially in Germany. I cannot find a party which gives me a compelling positive vision of the future right now, because actually the whole thing they're doing is saying, but those stupid idiots, they are Nazis, fascists, nostalgia is not right, and so on. But they're not putting an alternative, saying, okay, let's make that country better where you live, and this is the way forward. And unless we do that, we will lose that fight, because more and more people will feel themselves in an inertia. And so my parents lived through Brezhnev years in the Soviet Union, which brought down the whole system, because it was exactly like that. So nothing was changing for a very long time. So that I think we need, or like my appeal to politicians, let's create a positive vision, let's create another Schengen, let's abolish another roaming fees, let's create a fair and simple pension product for the people, let's, I don't know, abolish the private insurance scheme, let's do stuff which is common sense. We are large lobbying groups, but people will feel better afterwards. And a lot of it is common market topics in Europe, but so we need a positive vision and positive things which will change our life.
Thank you very much.
I have a question regarding the book. I would like to know which is the book that you're currently reading, and which one book which you would suggest people like me to know about the personal finances, because I'm really undereducated and I really want to know more about the personal finances. Thank you.
Oh, so yeah, personal finance. The book which I read as the last one, which is recent. So there is a guy. So I like reading historical books. I mentioned that, and there is a very good historical writer whose name is Montefiore, and Montefiore writes about like his main bestseller was Stalin. It's a very interesting book, by the way. Yeah. Okay, sure. I was answering the question. So he has very nice books in a broader historical context. I can. Yeah. Cool. And the one I read was about Romanovs. So it's a very nice book. So it gives you a perspective about 400 years of history and what influences things happening. On the personal finance, so we have a advisor who has wrote a very good German book actually about personal finance, Professor Weber, and it's describing the common traps and what to do right about your personal finance. I cannot recall exact name of the book, but I will give you just after my speech. It's something like how to do Anlage, so how to invest your money.
Okay. We do here and then there. Okay, hi. I had a question about, you mentioned that your target audience is a bit older than the current room, and I was wondering if you foresee tailoring some of your products specifically to young people, students, or early professionals, and if it's not on the roadmap, why?
Yeah, sure. So I described how we developed the product. So actually we concentrated on those lump sum single investment use cases, and those are typically large investment amounts. And then you naturally so we didn't say we want only young, old people because they cannot use the mobile, and that's easier for us because we do only desktop product, which is true. But like you get the most in terms of investment amounts. With a simple product application. So we are going exactly into the opposite since the last, I think, 3 or 4 years. So the last ones which we launched, the savings plan, it's actually designed for very young people. So when you are starting your saving and do not have enough and you want to discipline yourself, so you want to put small amounts of money regularly aside. One product which we are thinking of, which we really like, is that, because this one is cool because you can invest small amounts of money monthly, but you need to tell us how much. So the second thing which we're thinking afterwards as a development is to tailor it a bit to your spending and to tell you like how much can you possibly expect to save the next month, and this is what we suggest to do. And then to discipline yourself, so to give you a warning and saying, oh, by the way, we think that you are a bit overspending this month, so either you reduce your monthly spending or reduce your what you put aside, or you discipline yourself. So those are the things we're thinking about more, and bringing down actually minimum investment to €1. So that's how we want to help the younger people do it.
Yeah. When you had your idea and were kind of ready to evaluate or launch it, how did you convince your co-founders to join you?
Yeah, so that was actually, so one of my co-founders convinced me to join him with my idea. So we were on a trip jointly, and then he came to me and said more or less, we spent a lot of fun time at McKinsey, but I will be leaving, and asked him what he will be doing, and he said, I don't have a clue, but I want to found a company, and if you have an idea, then toss it over. So tell me what I should be doing. So that's more or less how it started. So the other of my co-founders, we went out, I think, jointly in Frankfurt around 2010, and he was in the founding team of 2 companies, so eBureau and Simfi, and actually he wanted to found again, and we talked drunk about founding again, and then at some point I called him and said, hey, I'm founding, are you joining? He said, yes, of course. So.
Hi, your words are very insightful, and listening to the talk, it kind of reminded me that I'm a 20-year-old kid moving to Berlin who wants to create an impact. And my question for you, and I think it can be generalized, is different things work for different people. So my question for you is, what advice do you have about what not to do for someone who wants to create an impact?
So I think so I was lucky when I was very young because like when I was 15 I did my first job, which was in politics. Sorry for that. So I was working for the Georgian president back then, and what I was lucky in was I found my first boss was a real mentor. So what he has done at the interview and then every week afterwards he gave me his so back then in Soviet or in Georgia we didn't have almost no foreign press. He had one copy of The Economist which was going to this president's office. He gave it to me and said, read this Economist and I will talk to you like half an hour a week. I will pick up a topic and then we'll discuss about this article. So which gives you like you try to broaden your knowledge. He takes real time and I had a real mentorship experience. And so you shouldn't be doing stuff where you do not have an experience where you think you are learning, and you are learning a lot. And ideally also a person, so someone whom you perceive as a mentor. So that's the ideal thing to do. If you have a longer time of 6 months or 12 months not learning and not having someone whom you look up to and who invests in you, then change that. So change the job, find someone, reach out and do that stuff, because that's immensely impactful and helpful.
Hey, thanks for taking the time. Just a bit of the classic Peter Thiel question. What do you think is true that most people wouldn't accept or wouldn't consider true?
What is true, what most people wouldn't accept?
Yeah, like what do you believe is true that most people wouldn't?
Wow.
So basically, like, what are counterintuitive truths that you believe in? Thanks.
So I think I will relate it to my business because it's a very broad question. So you can start with any answer. So basically, I'm in a so we are all in a bubble. So I'm in an environment. I'm also in a bubble. So I talk with VCs. I would talk with other founders, and those people have a common denominator. They believe that in finance, things are changing extremely rapidly. So the world is like tomorrow, it will not be like today. And I really believe that's complete bullshit, because the world of finance and how the whole thing is constructed is based on stickiness, long-term, people not changing, almost impossible to move relevant pieces of wealth around or to a new provider. So actually, I'm myself persuaded is the speed we're currently growing might be, it's beyond my expectations, and I don't think it might be even sustainable in the long term. So I do not believe in exponential growth. I do not believe in rapidly changing things in the wealth area. I think I'm the least aggressive fintech founder you can find in Europe.
Hi, Beck here. You were asked during the fireside chat about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, gave us like a short answer. I wondered if you could go into a little more detail and maybe also address this idealistic notion that central authorities can be replaced by decentralized ones, Ethereum and so on and so forth, and how this all formed over the last 10 years and how you still think that's all bullshit.
Okay, happy to. So I will start with the easier one, which is cryptocurrency. I think I like simple thinking. So actually, if you create a currency, you are looking for some things. One is acceptance, so it has to be universally accepted. The second is stability. And the third one is actually volume in the currency, or someone who is backing it as an ultimate counterparty. I miss all those things in cryptocurrencies in general, and also stable coins do not really perform that because you do not have a third party overseeing that. So it's either fraud or extremely volatile, and the worst thing is combination of both. So I think that's not a currency. So that doesn't fulfill a currency functionality. Is it like a speculation? Can you earn money with that? Definitely. And I think few people are earning a lot of money in that area, and I don't think it's extremely democratic. So you do not bring it to masses, or you do not let everyone participate. If you look at Bitcoin holding, it's extremely concentrated. So it's really few accounts earning tons of money. So I do not get it. So maybe I'm like completely, I'm like the least aggressive founder, so I am wired differently, but I don't see a broad use case. I see a money laundering use case, I see a speculative use case, but I don't see even a mining use case. I mean, Georgia is one of the big Bitcoin producers. It wastes so much energy for, that's my cryptocurrency thing. On blockchain, I mean, I struggle a bit to find the use case where there is a market difference towards trusted third-party principle. Because actually you have, for many of those things, you have centralized databases where someone like manages the database. So let's take a very concrete example. I mean, Georgia was one of the first countries going to the blockchain for public registry on land use. And after that, it's got more expensive, and actually they kind of had the feeling that they do not control the technology behind that. And had an outsourced provider, which was not before. So there was no market like improvement in the quality of product because it was instantly available before as well. It somehow got a bit more expensive and a bit less controllable. So there might be case. So I really believe that there might be a cross-border currency transfer case, and it might be Ripple, which I think it is not. But there are some use cases where the technology might prove itself to be paying back quite nicely. I don't see it right now, so I don't see because you still have this central counterparty trust issue, or someone who operates, or it's unfraudable, and so the participants, I think, are not quite there to use it commonly.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I can imagine that a lot of older people in Germany with lots of money would be a bit more conservative. So when you were starting out, what was the approach for you to gain trust of like early users to actually give you money?
So that's a good question, and we spent a bit of time to think like what you can do, because you can do only limited things. So you cannot, so you should not be telling lies. So if you are a company founded 6 months ago, then you are a company founded 6 months ago. If the liquidity on the account of the company is just for 1 year and you will burn the money in 1 year, then that's like that. So you shouldn't be telling lies. So that's the first principle. The second one is we tried to construct the whole scheme in the way that that's secure for the customers, because we do not touch money. So basically, our first communication was purely around your money is always on the bank accounts. So we're not able to access it. That's a bit different with payment providers or with other people who have access, who are channeling the money through collective accounts, so that we avoided that throughout the whole construct. The third thing is we started saying, okay, so we are not touching money, but who is touching money? So it's deposit insurance protected accounts. So that's a lot of communication was about deposit insurance, how is it constructed, how much amount, 100,000 cap. We kept this for the customers. And then the last thing was a bit about the company, so that we started at the beginning actually to actively talk about McKinsey background, professional. We involved a couple of professors in the starting phase who liked actually this cross-border European idea to bring in external trust elements, so beyond the pure product element. And then we started auditing the company very early. So not only this TÜV Datenschutz, but also like real internal management control system audits, which we are sharing also to third parties.
Hi, I would like to ask you, where do you see raisin in the next 10 years? So what's the vision for you, your company? What's the dream?
So my dream is actually, one of the reasons to launch it was frustration with the industry, but also frustration on the personal finance side of myself, because a lot of stuff out there in the market is just too expensive and intransparent and unfair. So I would love to see Raisin in the 10 years to be the go-to place for people who have saved a bit of money, or a lot of money, doesn't matter, but who want to see online, fast, transparent way for them, where they trust the provider. So where they know that the products there will be for them and not against them. So that's my vision, and what it entails is that we do not corrupt ourselves. This is the main challenge, not to go into this corrupt schemes or conflict of interest things. And the other thing is we need to roll out the product line, because until now we have good solution maybe for 60-70% of client money, but not for the remaining 30. So we need to enlarge the portfolio of products we're offering.
Thank you very much. Big round of applause for Tamaz again.
Que la famille